verse 9 of chapter 18. It says, "To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable." All right, so I'll start this again because this is really this is ruining the conclusion of my sermon because it tells exactly what's going on here. This is a parable written to some who are confident of their own righteousness. Righteousness is one of those churchy Bible words that we don't use very often outside the church. When's the last time you talked to someone about, you know what, I feel pretty righteous this week? You know, or you know what, you're doing good, your righteousness is on point. We don't use it. It just means goodness, right? It's rightness. It's doing right, acting as you should, being postured and doing the things you ought to do. So this is a parable to some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else. And Jesus told them this parable. So this is for us. This is for when we find ourselves in one of those places where everyone else is doing everything wrong and you're the only one doing the right thing. You ever feel like that? Ever feel frustrated that it feels like you're the only one trying to go the right direction? Would you ever feel like everyone else is getting it wrong or heading in the wrong direction? This is for us. This is for us in those times. And our society kind of is set up right now for us to all feel that. Because it feels good when you feel like you're morally superior to everyone else. All right? You get a dopamine hit. Your Facebook feed, if you do that, has an algorithm that feeds you things that echo what you already believe, that echoes your previous established angers, and villainizes everyone you already seem and perceive as a villain, regardless of what your beliefs are, regardless of what side of a political aisle or a side of an issue you're on. It feeds you what you want to see. And so right now, it is really, really, really easy for us to get self-deluded and be in denial and be confident in our own righteousness and look down on everyone else. So if there's ever a parable that is appropriate or apropos for the moment in our context, in our society, this is it. Because it's really easy to feel confident in your own righteousness. So Jesus has this to say to us this morning. And this is a parable. So he says, 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. So right off the bat, we should be establishing ourselves. The Pharisee is the one that knows the law, that is doing what is right, or is attempting to. He would be one of the good people. He has the good last name. He hangs out with the right people. He goes to the proper spaces and places. He isn't part of that other crowd. Right? The tax collector would be one of those others. He would be a traitor in our day. He would be someone that has sold out America, given state secrets away, that someone that is actively oppressing Americans around us or those around us. This is what a tax collector would have been seen like back in that day, because this was a person who was a Jew that was acting against the interest of other Jews by extracting money for them for the oppressive foreign Roman government that was occupying them. So that's the type of situation we're in. And this story is setting it up. You've got a good guy already and a bad guy in the narrative. And then Jesus messes with that paradigm, as he always does. The Pharisee, he stood by himself and prayed, "God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector." Let's read that again. This is his prayer. God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, Republicans, Democrats, however you want to do this, right? However, whatever you want to put in there. I'm glad I'm not like those people, the other people, the people I disagree with, or even like this tax collector. And then, like, this is a pretty proud prayer. This is a very arrogant prayer. And he goes on to brag to God, which never ends well. He goes on to brag and say, I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. He's doing what he ought to do, right? He's fasting. He's tithing. He is doing what he's supposed to do, and he's bragging to God as if he's saying, you know what, you owe me, right? I've earned some Christian points. I want to cash it out. Bless me now, right? As if Christianity is some type of transaction that we earn favor with God by doing good, and it's owed to us as blessings, right? A couple things I want to pay attention to as we read this. I want us to notice that the Pharisee was focused on others and on what he did, what he had done, on the things he had succeeded at, right? His prayer was a prayer about other people. His focus of this prayer wasn't on himself, wasn't even on God. It was on other people. And about building himself up in his mind, in relation before God, in relation to those people. Okay, let's continue on. Let's see how the tax collector prays. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He didn't think it was worthwhile, or he did not feel that he was worthy to go and approach the altar, the front of the temple. He would not even look up to heaven. He averted his eyes. He beat his breast, he pounded his chest, and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Right? It's a very different prayer than the one we just heard from the Pharisee. I want to read his prayer, his simple, earnest, heartfelt prayer. God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I know that I've fallen short. Please be kind to me, right? It's kind of what he's saying. Right? The tax collector's focus was completely different. The tax collector was focused on God, and in looking at him, he didn't look, he averted his eyes, but in reflecting and focusing on God, he realized how short he had fallen, how short his life had fallen, how far off the mark of what he was created to be he was, and it caused him to cry out for mercy. Right? One man looking at other people and bragging about his superiority before God in regards to those other people, and the other one reflecting on how great and amazing God is and how much he was in need of him. I'm better, and I've done what I need to do, God bless me, or, dear God, you are so amazing, I can't even stand in your presence. Oh, I need mercy, I need help, because I am broken and messed up, right? Very, very different prayers. Continuing on, I tell you that this man, rather than the other, that this tax collector, rather than the other, went home justified before God. Justified as in being declared righteous or declared good. As in this action, how he behaved, how he prayed was right. He did this right, is what Jesus is saying. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Another one of those Yoda statements by Jesus, right? It's the upside down statements. It's those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. When you go before God, if you're arrogant or if you think you have it figured out, there's an attitude adjustment coming. right? Pretty soon, pride comes before the fall, right? There's a whole entire saying about this. Like, our attitude is incorrect. It is off. But when we come humbled, he picks us up as a precious child and sends us out. Because that is the right way to approach God in complete awareness of our desperate need for him and his salvation. The tax collector was righteous. His actions were declared good, justified, because of his cry for mercy, right? That's the gospel, right? That's the good news, that we can cry for mercy and God hears it, right? We don't earn it. We don't pull ourselves up by our Christian bootstraps and earn our salvation. We depend upon the gracious mercy of a loving God who sees us and cares more about getting us out of the horrible situations we get ourselves in than being angry about what we've done. So much so, he proved it on the cross through Jesus. And that's good news. That's the good news. That's why we're here. That's why we're here in and week out, because we don't have it figured out. And if I fooled you, I definitely don't have it figured out. And trust me, I know I haven't fooled anyone. We're all in desperate need of God. All right? He was not declared righteous because he outdid the other man. Right? It's not a competition. It's not a bell curve. It's not the top 10% of righteous people who have done the right things get into heaven, and too bad if you don't get an A in the righteousness grading, you're out. That's not how it works, thankfully. Thank God. Literally, thank God for it, right? It's because he cried for mercy. He was aware of his need for mercy. So much so, he averted his eyes. So much so, he stood in the back. So much so, he pounded on his chest and asked for mercy because he acknowledged that he was a sinner. And Jesus is saying that's the way to pray. That's how you do it. That's how you avoid being arrogant. That's how you avoid falling into the pitfall of thinking you've got it figured out and all those other people are just ruining this whatever, this country, this community, the school systems, the whatever. The Bible spends a lot of time talking about this. I just want to reread the last part of the section of Scripture that Keegan read earlier. You save the humble, but bring low those whose eyes are haughty. Right? There's lots of Psalms where this is brought up. In fact, we talked about this idea earlier when we read through Luke. We read in chapter 11. I don't know why the chapter numbers aren't here. But for all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. This is a parable where Jesus was talking about where you choose to sit at a banquet. Don't choose the seats of honor, choose the lowest ones, because, it'll get corrected. And then today, for all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. This is Jesus over and over and over saying this. So it must be somewhat of a big deal. Right? It matters. And I thought about going into kind of a longer narrative from the Old Testament on how it matters so much, but I don't think that's necessary. It's important that we're humble. It's important that we understand our position before God, because if we don't, we're not a disciple. The long and short of it is we're not really following Jesus. If we've got it figured out, we don't need him. Right? If we've got it figured out, we don't need Jesus. And the entire basis and premise and center and core of Christianity is we need him. And so unless we take our daily dose of humble, unless we eat that humble pie, whatever thing you want to use, we don't follow him. We're like, all right, Jesus, I got this. Just bless what I'm doing. Watch me. And that doesn't work out. That doesn't change us. It doesn't change our family. It doesn't change how our kids are raised and how they love their spouses when they grow up. It doesn't change how our community operates. It doesn't change the trajectory of our lives, let alone the world around us. And our world desperately needs Jesus. And it needs his disciples to be humble enough to do it how he did it and not how we think it ought to be done. Choose the tree of life as opposed to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Same thing, over and over throughout scriptures. It's the same choice, this way or that. It matters. It's critically important. And Jesus shows us and teaches us in this parable, but practically shows us how to rely upon God's mercy. So, what we're called to focus on is focus on him and remember our dependence on his mercy. Focus on God, just like that tax collector. Let ourselves realize how far off we are and how much we desperately need him and rely upon